All right, so we have one attendee. Oh no, they're coming in. Okay, so it was a matter of starting it to see people. Anyways, hi everyone. Thanks for joining us here this evening. We're just going to give it a few more minutes for people to start showing up. But it's good. It's good to see you all. Hi, Michelle, Kristen, Carrie, Joe, Dawn, Connie, Annalisa, Elisa. All right, very good. So today we're going to talk a little bit about toxins. For those of you who don't know me, which probably there's nobody here who doesn't. I'm Dr. Odette Suter. I'm a holistic vet, and I'm all about, the gut and microbes and all that good stuff. And we'll dive into that. And I have with me tonight Dr. Betsy Redman. So Betsy, maybe you should introduce yourself. You do a better job than I do.
Yeah. So, I work for Innovative Pet Lab, and we do gut bacteria tests. We don't do bacteria. We look at physiologic function of the gut with stool testing. I have a PhD in nutrition, and I worked for 20 years in functional medicine labs. And I got a sick dog and wanted to test her. And so we started talking with our colleagues, and then we ended up starting a company. So all the stuff that, dogs and cats, horses too, are mammals. So a lot of the same testing that's going to work in people has the same meaning in our pets. And there's no reason we can't look and see what's going on, because some of those fecal markers can be early indicators of things.
Right. Exactly. And that's what I love. You bring a lot of experience from the human world. But before we continue, can you guys all hear us? Should have asked that before, right? But the chat was disabled, so I'm not sure if you guys can say something, or maybe on Facebook, maybe I'll see it there. Let's see. Well, anyways, otherwise there'll just be a recording. Yeah, I don't see anybody. So if you guys can hear us, that would be great. If you could, I don't know, raise your hand or something. Okay, very good. Thank you, Dawn. All right. So before we continue, anyway, so what are you? Well, I think I was going into saying that a lot of what we know in the human field and what you guys have been testing for in the human field is now slowly migrating into the animal world as well. But we are definitely way behind, because when I do any sort of testing for myself, there's like 3, 4, 5 pages worth of lab results that I get back, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? Because we don't have these same tests for in the animal world. So it's nice that you guys are coming from the human world and bringing some of the tests so that we have a bit more available to us with our animals. So
unfortunately, a lot of these tests were done they weren't pets, they were animal subjects. They were used them in testing for animal testing. So they would start with mice or rats and move to other rabbits or dogs. Mm-hmm. So that's unfortunately where a lot of the research came. Now there is more research on some fecal markers, and so that's easier to get.
Yeah. Plus, there's an explosion of research in that area anyways, the gut, the microbiome and everything. I think I saw some number. Well, I basically Googled new research on microbiome in 2023, and I think I did that mid-January, and there were over 20,000 new research papers that had already come out just in like a 2-week period. Maybe completely off. Maybe I searched it wrong or something, but I'm like, wow.
Yeah, I think a lot of it also is like nobody wants to publish papers that don't also include information on the gut. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of the stuff going out now. Like if it's going to help to look at the gut, we should know, probably because we're so behind on some of that.
Yeah, which is great, because generally any new research that comes out takes about 14 years or so on average to become mainstream, that knowledge. But it seems like with the gut, it's a little bit different. It's like with the explosion of research of on the microbiome, it's also penetrating every aspect. It's like a pandemic, a pandemic of knowledge.
Yeah, no, I always think that's true. If your vet or your doctor ask a question and they look at a textbook, for answers, they're already more than a decade behind. You've got to go to current research and see what's happening there.
Yeah, exactly. So tonight we want to dive into a little bit of toxins and how they affect the gut. So maybe we can start with, I guess, maybe the classes of toxins, or just what types of toxins affect the gut. I don't know if you want to start with that.
I mean, I think there's not, a lot of specific things. I think I see the toxins as really broad, and sometimes you don't really know what's going to affect what. You might affect the immune system, and then that's going to affect the gut. So those kind of things, it's like you want to just try to avoid all the toxins. And I think with pets, you don't always think that they're going to impact them. People just don't necessarily think about it, but they're like a little person, a little mammal living in your house. They're also closer to the ground, so they're going to get a lot of those. So if you're having an immune reaction, that's going to affect, what's going on in the gut. I think that, the markers that I would look at for our test for toxins specifically would be beta glucuronidase. And that's, that's going to help. Well, it's not going to help. It's going to be bad that it recirculates. So beta glucuronidase is an enzyme we make for, some beta carotenes. We make it, our dogs make it, cats make it. So, but turns out so do gut bacteria. They also make it. So if it's really high, it can identify you have, more kind of imbalance in gut bacteria, but also it's used, it will break down your toxins. So like glucuronidation is a way we get rid of toxins, and we package them up with the glucuronidation process and we kick them out. They're going out the stool, but then if the enzyme beta glucuronidase is there, it'll pull the glucuronide molecule off. So then toxins or hormones are there to recirculate. So they can, cause havoc in the gut, or they can get reabsorbed. So it's not, I don't just think about exposure, but I think about what's happening after. So they can just recirculate, because it's not just getting rid of them. It's also like, they can recirculate in the gut.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. But I think that something that I hear a lot from people is like, well, I'm doing everything right. Why is my animal still sick? And I don't know that maybe the awareness of how many toxins are actually in the environment and the soup that we're all swimming in, I think that awareness is not quite there. And I found a quote from a Japanese biochemist, PhD, and he was quoted to say that a novel substance is either isolated or synthesized every 2.6 seconds on the average during the past 12 months, day and night, 7 days a week in the world. And that was in 2009. So who knows how it is now? It may have increased even more, but we just, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, I didn't actually calculate it, how many toxins that would be in a year, for example. That would have been something I could have done. But anyways, even since World War II, they say that more than 1.5 million new chemicals have come on the market, and most of them are carcinogenic. Most of them have never been tested for safety. Most of these toxins get approved after just 90 days. So they don't really go through any sort of rigorous testing as far as how they would affect, anybody really, the world, I guess. And the problem is also that then we have this combination of toxins that we don't really know how they interact with each other either, because, we think about glyphosate, we think about aluminum, but how do they affect each other? Because we now know that glyphosate actually makes heavy metals 1,000 times more toxic. So there's like a, you know, they all sort of work, you know, well, they interact with each other.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, and then things get stored. I think of like phthalates, you know, those products that, you know, they're gonna have an impact. They get stored in fat. So if your pet's losing weight, you know, same with people. When you lose a lot of weight, you're releasing toxins that were stored in fat. So you want to have a way to bind those on their way out.
Right, exactly.
You know, and so I think it's kind of, you can think of it in all aspects, but you kind of have to think of it more that, you know, pets are going to be more impacted. Like, you know, when we look at leaky gut, we look at zonulin, and in people, cigarette smoking is one of those things that can increase leaky gut or has associated. So, but if you have a pet in the house and you smoke, they're going to get secondhand smoke. And is that dealing with, you know, increasing their gut leakiness, which then can lead to gut inflammation?
Yeah. Because at this point, it's really hard to pinpoint what exactly is causing the inflammation, you know, in the gut and the body in general, because again, we're exposed to so many things that it's hard to pinpoint. We just know there are probably toxins and we need to help the body with that.
Right. And yeah, not have fragrances in the house, all those things like the environmental working group would talk about too.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, you were talking about, you know, the toxins like or chemicals can get approved. They just get a grass kind of path. But with dog food, they really don't have much, if any, legislation on making sure that just general dog food is safe.
Yeah, no, because I mean, they use dogs as landfills, and cats and cows and sheep and, you know, other farm animals, they use them as landfills. So basically what's not useful in or can't be used in the human field, you know, human nutrition that's not considered safe for humans, they just shuttle it into animal feed. So that comes with all sorts of things, including mold, you know, which also is a toxic substance to the body, you know, is also toxic to the body. So there's a lot of that happening in the animal world. And I actually just watched a video this morning, or an interview by a farm vet, and he found that cows, when they had high levels of glyphosate exposure, they would, instead of sticking their nose or their mouth in the water and suck up the water, they would start licking it up and had difficulty swallowing and would also be coughing. And what he also found was these cows tended to have higher levels of Clostridium microbes. And there's Clostridium botulinum that can cause paralysis of muscles. So he attributed that overgrowth of Clostridium because of the glyphosate, you know, because glyphosate is an antimicrobial, so it kills a bunch of microbes and allows others to flourish, including the Clostridium species. But in any case, that botulism toxin was then paralyzing their throat, and then they couldn't really drink normally. But he found that just removing glyphosate from their diet, within 2 weeks, they were back to normal. Well, you know.
Right, yeah.
So
it's impactful. That's pretty quick, physiologically.
Yeah. So anyways, I mean, glyphosate is definitely one of the toxins that's most prevalent in the world, because for one, it's water soluble and therefore it's everywhere in the water, the rain sample, the soil samples. I mean, it's pretty much everywhere. And I think that's probably one of the most prevalent and most damaging toxins that we deal with, just because it's everywhere.
Right.
Not necessarily that because it's more toxic. I mean, if you drink a glass of arsenic or something, you're going to die too, but it's probably more toxic. But I think that, you know, it's just that it's so everywhere that everybody has it in their system.
Right. Yeah, I had given my dog, she had issues, and so she had a little bit of rice. But when I cook my rice, halfway through cooking it, I take it and I rinse it, and then I start boiling it again, because somebody had done some research that takes out a bunch of the arsenic if you take it out and rinse it. And
Yeah.
So just all those, it does get to be time consuming, and you really have to think about, you know, where all those things are. But, you know, I like also with the phthalates that being like hormone mimics. So,
yeah. And phthalates are mostly in plastic, but are fire retardants phthalates too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So furniture, exhaust, basically, or new cars, new computers,
dry cleaning.
anything new. Yeah, dry cleaning.
Like anything that has those volatile smells is going to do that. So what's your number one, like, what do you start with if you have a dog who is really toxic? What do you do for kind of bringing down the toxin level? I mean, I think our testing can identify like things have gone wrong and you need to fix them. But what's your favorite kind of go-tos for detoxing for pets?
Well, detoxing has to be done properly because otherwise we can make things worse. You know, you mentioned the recycling of toxins in the GI tract. So my first thing is to always provide them with nutrients that can, well, I guess the first thing is, you know, remove the toxins from the environment as much as you can, you know, like take them out of, you know, take them in from the rain, basically. So stop spraying, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do. Use biodegradable cleaning supplies, you know, all this luminescent purple, pink, green, yellow, orange, whatever. That's really very unhealthy, not just for the animals, obviously, but for us humans as well. So just cleaning up the environment that you can control. Obviously, we can't control everything, but, you know, do it the best you can. And then we want to provide them with the nutrients that they need in order for the liver to be able to function properly. Because if we start to detox and, you know, start mobilizing toxins, and the liver doesn't function properly because the liver itself has gotten a little toxic and plugged up, then we're just going to have a backlog. So it's very important that we provide the nutrients that are necessary for proper detoxification to begin with. So I would always start with that for at least a couple of weeks, because otherwise the animal is just going to get more sick. And then healing the gut is my next one. And usually I do that sort of in conjunction with providing good nutrients, because a healthy gut is obviously necessary for nutrients to be able to be absorbed. So that will be my next one. And just by providing, you know, creating a healthier gut, a healthier microbiome, that itself will already start heavily increasing detoxification, because the microbes are very good at gobbling up stuff and, you know, getting it out the rear end.
They produce things that we need, you know, some nutrients and then other compounds. And I think if you have a bad balance of gut bacteria, you're going to make compounds that can be harmful. And if you have good ones, you're going to have more helpful compounds. Right.
Because they basically do help every single organ system in the body to function better, including the liver and the kidneys and everything else, because of the nutrients that they provide to the body and the biochemical compounds. So that's usually where I would start. And then once the GI tract is in better shape and the animal is kind of feeling a little bit better, then I will start to detoxify the body and, you know, work on pulling some of the toxins out. But those are the first two steps that should not be missed, because otherwise, again, it just recycles. And I have people who come and their animal has been detoxing through the skin for like a year, and I'm like, yeah, that's not detox, that's just reintoxication, you know, like skin outbreaks and, you know, just a total mess and itchy, you know, because they've been detoxing. That's what people go to right away. It's like, oh yeah, let me detox. Yeah, it has to be done properly.
Yeah, I mean, I think people don't realize that, you know, for people and for pets, the skin is like a big organ for that. You know, whenever I see like people with, you know, rashes or something, I think, ooh, what's going on with their immune? What are they reacting to? What is that?
Yeah. Well, I think the skin is also, you know, when they are trying to detoxify through the skin, that's also a sign that detoxification pathways are probably a little blocked, because I think that a lot of toxins then get sort of stuck in the skin, and then the skin becomes all inflamed because the immune system notices that there are toxins there and that the cells look a little abnormal, because when toxins get into the cells or attached to the cells then don't look healthy, and the immune system then tries to clean that up, because those are, the body shouldn't have unhealthy cells. And so I think that as a result, then we have a huge amount of inflammation in the skin rather than, so it's basically a sign that detoxification is not working properly.
Right. Yeah, I know that, like, when people ask, like, which of our 3 tests should, if you have to pick one, which one would you start with? I always think of, the inflammation and immunity.
Mm-hmm.
If there's gut inflammation, you need to address that, because, like you said, you can't, digestion's going to be impaired. There's, a lot of things aren't going to be able to happen if your immune system's constantly dealing with, immune reactions in the gut.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at calprotectin and secretory IgA.
Yeah. And, for those who don't know, what is calprotectin? If you could explain that.
Yeah, it's a neutrophil infiltration into the gut lining. So it's an immune reaction. It's a type of white blood cell that comes into the gut lining. And so if there's a lot of inflammation, when you think of inflammation, like if you cut your hand and it's red and swollen, that's inflammation reaction. So that can happen in your gut. And so your immune system runs there, sends a bunch of immune cells to try to deal with it. And if it's a lot of inflammation, so if you get a test and there's no inflammation, it's low, but if there's a little bit, there'll be a little bit there. But a lot of inflammation can mean that just all the activities the gut is supposed to be doing just aren't happening. So I think that a lot of times you might not know, is it diet? Is it toxins? You might not know where that's coming from, that immune, that inflammation. But if you start dealing with everything, and you got to deal with, like you said, you got to start with getting the gut in order before you go into doing detox, getting food improved, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because one thing that we obviously see with toxins, a lot of them will affect the gut lining in such a way that it creates leaky gut. Mm-hmm. Where the cells start to separate. There's only one layer of cells on the inside of the gut that lines the intestines. And so if these cells start to separate, well, all sorts of stuff can go through that shouldn't, including more toxins. So having a healthy gut lining will also keep more toxins out. So do you find, I know you have a test where you also test for gluten.
Yeah, we have a leaky gut or intestinal permeability. So yeah, funny. My modeling goes this way. I noticed yours goes this way.
Yeah, I don't know.
I need a diagram, but I always just use my fingers like they're little cells or villi, and they're supposed to be closed. And they're always opening a little bit to let somebody in and then close. But if a leaky gut, they just don't have the wherewithal, and things just come in. They don't, you wouldn't want in, that somebody's gut didn't mean to let in. So when those separate, there's occludin and different proteins that are in there. And so zonulin is one of those. So when the zonulin level is high in the stool, it can identify that there's a leaky gut, that those cells are not tight together, that they don't have control over that. Mm-hmm. And because gluten is often researched with zonulin, with leaky gut, the zonulin test includes antigliadin. So we can see, are you having a reaction to gluten? Is your pet having a reaction to gluten? So maybe pull that out. And sometimes you just never want to reintroduce it. But sometimes once you heal the gut, you can kind of reintroduce those things.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, well, I think that the level's gonna, let you know. So yeah. You never want to feed your dog anything with gluten. It's not like they need it. So
yeah. Well, because I had to kind of, I'm laughing because I was just in Europe, and I figured, well, yeah, I'm well enough. I can eat some gluten. Well, let's just say it didn't quite work out the way I hoped it would. Or expected. I didn't have any gut issues, but I knew that brain issues can also be a result of leaky gut, so I knew exactly what was happening. Yeah, and anyways, yeah. So
yeah, I think that toxins can make all that worse. Yeah, I mean, it can make it worse so that you have more, you might have more inflammation, or your pet might have a leaky gut, but then it can also, it makes it worse, but then you're more likely to get more toxins when that, because really, if this is the intestine and this is, you know, where all the bacteria are, it's outside the body. So if it's supposed to kind of really take care, like who's coming in, well, I'm not going to let that in because that's dangerous. But if that's all messed up and the lining's messed up, you can't really keep those things out.
Yeah, exactly. And some of these toxins are very good at killing off things. And because a lot of research has been done around gluten, not well, gluten too, but around glyphosate is what I meant to say. We have a lot more information on how that's affecting the body. I mean, just glyphosate itself, that's everywhere, will cause leaky gut, but it also upregulates some of these gliadin receptors, which that's why so many people have gluten sensitivity, because the gut lining is already primed to be reactive to gluten because of glyphosate exposure. So yeah, there's a lot of damaging things that are happening.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think that, you know, looking at, I always think like, you know, if look, our test, if you want to just do the test and you're doing everything and see where your pet is, if it comes back all great, then it's like, great, I'm doing the great thing. Or you can start to do everything right and then test. I mean, you can see if you're off, or you can, you know, get all those things right, like start with a good dog food, and you know, and I guess some people may have trouble, like how do they start those first steps? You know, if I feed my dog, you know, just the cheapest kibble, and, you know, how am I going to then go and move to a better dog food? You know, I think taking those steps.
Yeah. And I think whether you test up front or later would depend a little bit on the condition of an animal. You know, if you're suspecting, or if they're reactive to everything that you're feeding them, that you can't switch diet without them having blowout diarrhea, or, you know, vomiting, or whatever it may be, or not feeling well, then I would start with some testing. If it's a dog that's incredibly healthy, generally I probably would just start switching things around and see how things go, and then test just to see what else we need to adjust. So it would depend a little bit on where they're at in their journey.
Yeah. I mean, it's always hard because since I work at a lab, I always think, well, more testing, more information.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, I'm like that too, but you know.
No, I know. Yeah. It's like, oh, wait, there's an extra slot in the run. Let me throw this in. Yeah. And I was going to say, like, yeah, with the leaky gut, you know, increased zonulin, increased leaky guts associated with more food reactions. So, you know, you may start reacting to more food. So your pet may have got some type of toxic insult, but then that can lead to leaky gut, and then they start reacting to everything. So you kind of do have to do it in a whole, kind of a holistic manner to take, you know, everything.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely, especially, you know, when we talk about glyphosate again, there are a lot of things that we can do to limit the intake of glyphosate. Again, it rains everywhere, and studies done on dog food has shown that there's glyphosate in every single food, but the least amount of glyphosate was present in a raw diet. So because there was no grain or no legumes in it, and those foods that were highest in legumes and oats and things like that, which is basically the grain-free diets, they were highest in glyphosate. So we can do a lot just reducing, you know, cleaning up the diet a bit to reduce how much toxic material they take in that way, and cleaning up the water. Water is important too, because water contains a lot of toxins as well. So providing them with filtered water, and that's more than just a Brita filter, like a real good filtration system, which will also be good for, you know, pet parents, obviously, because there are a lot of, well, I mean, water is now filled with all kinds of drugs, you know, antibiotics, antidepressants. Right, yeah. You know, just drink water instead of going to the pharmacy.
And there's supposed to be a lot of Prozac in it. Yeah, Lipitor, all
exactly.
those meds. And I do think that, yeah, if your pet is on a dry kibble, they're going to be a lot more thirsty and drink a lot more water than if they're on a raw type diet.
Yeah.
So, it's more important.
Yeah, exactly.
Water, but everybody should have, clean water.
Yeah, definitely. And then I think one toxin that is not talked about a whole lot, well, I mean, it's talked about, but most people try to ignore it as best as possible because it's very inconvenient, which is basically cell phones, Wi-Fi.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's a big toxin for microbes as well, because microbes, they and cells, they talk to each other. So there's constant communication happening through chemicals, obviously, as well, but also through electrical signalings, because that's, the body is electric. Everything has a frequency and is electric. That's how we can measure EKGs or brain waves. So obviously these frequencies are going to be more faint. You can't hear them as loudly, but nevertheless, they are communicating with each other. And one big disruptor of that communication is external, harmful frequencies, which the cell phone radiation, Wi-Fi, electrical, cell towers, all sorts of man-made radiations are very damaging to these microbes, because then they don't know, they can't communicate with each other anymore, and so then they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Quorum sensing?
Yeah, exactly. Quorum sensing. Yeah. So I don't know if you want to explain what that means.
Yeah, well, they're just, they can sense each other, they can, communicate by fields, and within the gut. Like, I think of it more like in the ocean, sometimes they'll have those light up little bacteria that are kind of glowing. And it's more visual for the quorum sensing, but it's how that they would communicate. I think that also reminds me of grounding, which when I heard, people laying on the ground, which pets too. And I thought, well, that's ridiculous. I've spent my whole career thinking, well, that's not true. Let me research that. And it's like, oh, okay, that's true. That, that there was a study, and they had college athletes, and some slept inside and some slept on the ground. And the ones that slept out on the ground had lower inflammatory markers. And so there's just laying on the ground, because it does feel good to lay on the ground. So
yeah. So anyway, so we can't kind of quite forget that as a toxin, and staying away as much as possible, and definitely not having a dog bed right next to a Wi-Fi router would be better. Even better would be to hardwire things, because, well, for one, you have better connection anyway, so it works out. So I know that's very inconvenient, and a lot of people are probably tuning out right now. Well, I mean, I know how it is. I kind of like my cell phone next to me as well, because then if somebody calls, I can see who it is right away, and I don't have to get up. And well, even worse are the ones, these watches, these smart watches. I mean, those are really bad. So I will definitely never have one of those. Because then you constantly are getting vibrated. It'd be interesting to see, in a few years, how many people are actually developing tumors in that area. If that's going to happen, I don't know. I'm not trying to be, all dark and gloomy, but I'm like, come on, people. It's not necessary.
I used to turn the Wi-Fi off at night.
So yeah. So anyways, that's definitely something to think about, especially because, for example, with mold, we know that mold produces, I don't remember, I don't remember if it was in the 1,000 times more toxins, and these toxins they were producing were more toxic on top of that, in the presence of Wi-Fi. So what about all these microbes? And, we see a lot more animals with E. coli infections, and, high levels of the E. coli groups. And why is that? You know, are they just better at surviving being exposed to toxins and, you know,
yeah, I'm sure like
all
there's
of that, you know,
certain E. coli, certain Clostridia, they just kind of take up, you know, it's like somebody at a party who just takes up all the oxygen in the room. Like
right.
they do well just kind of taking over. And so some of those good ones that you want to see go down.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to quorum sensing. If the microbes are not communicating with each other, if a lot of, you know, if let's say the animal ate some E. coli, then nobody's responding to that. It's kind of like somebody coming in with a bag of garbage and just dumping it, and nobody's responding to that. You're just sitting there doing nothing, or you didn't even see it. So if the microbes are not aware of what's happening, they can't respond to that, because these microbes, they make antibacterial substances as well that then would help to keep these E. coli or salmonella or whatever it is at bay, so that they can't just take over. So communication is certainly extremely important.
Right. Yeah. And that's one. Yeah. So I think that if you have all your microbes kind of gone haywire, that can lead to more gut inflammation, which then to more issues.
Yeah. Well, it's all connected in the end. I mean, you can't separate it off, at least not in this world anymore, because you have to basically do a global sort of approach.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. And so I think, you know, with toxins, it's really cleaning up. Number one is cleaning up the environment, like cleaning up their, you know, they're getting better food, cleaning, you know, their water, checking around the house. And it's really when you check around your house or lawns, then, you know, it helps you too. I mean, I live near a park around, and I live near a park, and they spray it. And I was like, oh, now I gotta, you know, I just moved here and I'm gonna have to join the committee and get rid of it. Here, I don't want to walk my dog on there. I don't want to take little kids on there. I don't want to do it the day they spray. I don't want to do it 10 days after they spray.
Right. Yeah, because usually when they come and spray, they put a little sign up, and I think you're supposed to keep your dogs or animals in for what, like 12 hours, 24 hours or something like that. I'm like, that chemical is still going to be there in 24 hours. It's not going to have disappeared just like that. I mean, that's just ridiculous that way. Yeah. Anyways, maybe we should talk a little bit about, you know, what we can do to support the body with toxins as well, you know, like things that are a little bit more less disruptive, I guess, in a sense. And I'm thinking about binders. Are you familiar with binders, or do you have any favorites or anything that you use?
I don't have any favorites, no. Yeah, I guess I think of more about dealing with like immunity or leaky gut, those kind of things, like dealing with those things, and more so binding toxins. But really, you got to do one to get the other.
Right. Yeah, I was listening to Dr. Tom Cowden is his name, or Cowan, I can't remember. He's an amazing guy. He said, "You've got to get the schmutz out."
And how does he get the schmutz out?
Well, he says that getting the schmutz out is by replacing it with something else, because we have, in the process of, you know, poisoning our soils, we have definitely also created quite the deficiency, and we've obviously also over harvested and drained our soils, so there are less minerals and nutrients available to the plants, and as a result, less nutrients available to the animals. And so the chemicals and the heavy metals and such, they basically take up the space of the lacking nutrients. So adding more nutrients will also help to kick out these toxins, is what he's saying. So
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, when you think about it, like the reason there's so much arsenic in rice is because they're great at absorbing arsenic. You know, so that's there. You know, that's the kales and stuff like that. There's certain toxins that the sulfur's not, you know, with the sulfur compound, they're better at absorbing certain things.
Yeah, yeah. And especially with glyphosate chelating a lot of these minerals out of so that they become unavailable. So even if they're present in the soil, because they're chelated, they're unavailable to the plant then as well. So anyway, so replacing those, and then also stopping the war on all the microbes and, parasites and spirochetes and protozoa, etc., because they're really good at gobbling up toxins. They can gobble up 10 to 20 times their body weight in toxins. So just going in there and killing everything can also cause more problems, especially bigger parasites, worms. If they are loaded with toxins and you kill them in the body, then all these toxins are actually being released in the body. So getting them out without them disintegrating would be a better choice, because that way you get the toxins out with them. And again, coming back to the binders, that's where I would use binders. If we do some deworming, if an animal has parasites, I would add some binders so that the toxins that are being released in the process of, getting rid of the parasites, these toxins can be bound.
What are your favorite binders?
I like biotoxin binder. That's a company called Cellcore, and then Polypet has some binders as well for animals that help shuttle out toxins. So those are some of them. Charcoal, chlorella, cilantro can bind a little bit, but yeah, I have to do a bit more research on that, because binders, I find them a little confusing in some ways, because there are a lot of opinions on different binders, and some binders are strong binders where they really attach to the toxin and take it out, whereas other binders are weak binders, so they may possibly take it out from wherever they find it, but then they may release it on the way out, which then, that kind of doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So there's a lot more to binders than meets the eye. And then I think a lot of it also has to do with electrical charge. So are they positively or negatively charged? So yeah, there's a lot more to it, but I just kind of go with the ones that I know. But yeah, charcoal is a good one, just give some charcoal.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, that's again what the beta glucuronidase can identify. If that's really high, then you're likely getting those toxins recirculated. Yeah. I mean, generally, like calcium deglucarate or things can disassociate that, but you need to find out why is it so high.
Right.
Go in there and, kind of realign the gut bacteria, and then maybe check hormones or, toxin.
Yeah, because the hormone levels can obviously also be affected, because hormone glands are fatty tissue, so they can accumulate fat soluble toxins that then have an effect on the thyroid through the immune system, because then the immune system looks at the cells of the thyroid, for example, and says, wait a minute, that cell looks really not very healthy and a little foreign, and then it attacks it. And then it gets destroyed as a result of it, so if then too many cells are destroyed, then the hormone levels are going down.
So it is a big picture. Did anybody have questions, or
so apparently the chat is disabled. I don't know why. I clicked on the buttons and everything. I don't know. Oh, never mind, I found it. I keep forgetting. Yeah, okay, so the chat is now enabled. I clicked on the wrong thing. But there is a question from Penny on Facebook, and she asks, what type of Wi-Fi protection products would you recommend? I'm not a big fan of protection products, because, again, you have to take them out of the rain. So remediation, like not exposing them to Wi-Fi, is the way to go. But obviously, if you live in an apartment building, for example, and you can't do that, then there are ways to remediate that with black paint. Like there's special Wi-Fi or EMF paint that you can put on the walls. And there's also things that you can put in front of on the windows to keep that Wi-Fi from coming in. For example, if you live right next to a cell phone tower, for example. So there are a lot of things that can be done, but there are some pitfalls with that. It's really best to measure before you do anything. So have someone come out with a measuring device and then ask them how they would remediate it, and then have them come back once you've done that. Because if, for example, you're only covering up 3 walls and one wall does not have any cover, or the windows don't have any cover, then you can have Wi-Fi coming in, or any of these EMF, these electromagnetic frequencies come in, and then they will just bounce off the wall because they can't go anywhere because you blocked it. So it's like being in a car. In a car, Wi-Fi exposure is going to be much higher because it just bounces around, because it's like a Faraday cage. Same thing in an airplane, for example, as well. So you want to make sure that you do it right when you do the remediation. But easy things to do is just wire your computer, turn off Wi-Fi on your computer. You can also wire your phone. Your iPads. I have an iPad at my workplace that is wired. You just have to have a little connector thingy to then insert the Ethernet cable. So there are different ways that can be done, for sure. But yeah, I have a whole course on that, actually. So if you're interested, because it's not that simple, you have to know kind of what you're doing. But all these pendant things and such, I don't know how that they really work, because you're still exposed. Maybe it neutralizes them just a little bit near you if you're lucky. But yeah, most people who do Wi-Fi or EMF remediation, or the experts in that field, they say that those don't really work. So no need to waste money on that.
Yeah, I know there's that town out west where they don't have any Wi-Fi or anything like that.
Yeah, well, because there's so many people who are super sensitive to those nowadays, so it can make life miserable for them.
Yeah. So it looks like, we have some other questions.
Yeah.
What are examples of thought-soluble toxins? I mean, the first one I'm thinking of is like PCBs. I think a lot of fats, because toxins just get stored in fat, and when your pet eats a bunch of fat, like, if you've got just regular, meat from a regular store that was one of those feedlot kind of raised cattle, you're going to get that fat's going to have toxin in it. Butter's going to have, where the fat is concentrated, like in the fat, in butter, creams, those kind of things. Animal products that are fatty are going to concentrate toxins like that. So,
anyway. Yeah. And for example, heavy metals, aluminum, mercury, are also fat soluble because they accumulate in the brain really well. Lead will accumulate in the bones. I don't know if it's the bone or if it's the bone marrow. I'd have to look that up. But yeah, different toxins go different places, and glyphosate is water soluble, so it's the opposite. So it kind of floats around everywhere too.
Yeah, so I think getting cleaner fats, and there are some, I think, like chlorella or different toxin detoxifiers.
Yeah. And some of those binders are actually smart binders, because they only pull out what's not, what's toxic, and they leave the nutrients. Because with binders, we always have to be a bit careful that we don't pull out the good nutrients too. Like, for example, charcoal will pull out minerals and drugs too. For example, if you are giving a drug, if you're giving a dewormer, don't give charcoal at the same time. I would, give it a little bit, maybe a couple hours before, and then a couple hours afterwards. So you're basically already kind of preparing the gut for any dump of toxin, but you wouldn't want to give it at the same time, because otherwise possibly your drug isn't going to work.
Right. And then the other question, do either of you know any good gut pet supplements, something like a probiotic?
Okay.
Yeah, I think there are brands that are specific for pets. You know, TheraPet, Standard Process has some. I mean, I would kind of start with that, and then some people lines. But you probably have more performance picks.
Well, I have a very strong opinion about probiotics. The last time I sold a probiotic was probably about 2 or so years ago.
So you like more just changing the diet for prebiotics to support the bacteria you have.
Yeah, and then doing fecal transplants.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a different, like a probiotic is a bacteria that's taken, and they don't take up residence. They can do good things if they survive and make it there. They can do stuff. A prebiotic is going to feed the bacteria you have, and then a fecal transplant is going to kind of put the whole shebang in.
Yeah. Because the problem with probiotics is that you may only have 1 or maybe 10 or 15 species of microbes in that probiotic, and most of the time they're not even the native flora. So if you're trying to actually replenish the native resident flora, you're not going to achieve that. And compared to a healthy microbiome of a healthy dog that has 300 to 1,000 species of microbes, you don't even come close with a probiotic. So I usually don't even waste any time on that, because you're not going to get the same result. And I like quick fixes. Although that's sort of, I'm not a vet who does a pill for every ill or a supplement for every ill, but I still like to get quick fixes. So I just go for the big guns right away. I don't waste.
I think it can get pets well fast. Yeah, and then you can get on the road to getting, clearing toxins in the environment, better diet. So it makes it.
Yeah.
So then the other question, does the labs provide support for how to address these tests, or do you work with your veterinarians? So you can get the results, and we have an interpretive guide. We have other, chats like this, or online on our social media, but we have an interpretive guide that talks about what it means and gives suggestions. You can also print the results as a PDF and take them to your vet. But not every vet's going to be aware of these tests. But the interpretive guide has references, so they can look at that. But
I think it's a good idea to take them to your vet as well, because that way your vet can become more aware of the tests that are available, and that just brings them, just educates them basically, because as we mentioned earlier, research is exploding, and there's no way that anybody can keep up with that. So you as the pet parent are the educator of your vets, in the sense, because you're bringing seeds and you're planting little seeds that then your vet can either choose to nurture or not, but at least you brought it. And I think it's good to just bring more awareness of what's available so that they can learn about it.
Yeah, I was just going to say the tests are real easy. You get it in the mail, you order it, you just fill the tube up to the line, you put it back in the box and just mail it from your mailbox. So your pet poops, you can do the test.
Right, exactly. Although I do have one client, and she says that her dog always stops when she watches him, and he hides his poop, so she can never really find it. So it's really difficult for her to find our dog's poop, because he's so privacy, please.
It's private. I don't need you.
I know, it's so funny. So sometimes we want to do a test, and she's like, "Yeah, sorry, I didn't get any." I don't know where he hid it.
We've had 2 crazy cat ladies who have 6 cats, and they had to follow their cat to get the sample.
Yeah, they're probably going, "Hey, hello, what's wrong with you? Give me some space already."
All right, so we have another question, because we're getting close to time here. But do you think raw diets are best for pets' health?
Are you answering that, or am I?
No, I figured you would answer that one, because you've seen the range more of diet health.
Well, I always say that if the closer you can feed to what the animal, including human, would eat in the wild, the healthier they can be. And highly processed, high heat, garbage diets are not it, basically. So raw diets are definitely the best for, pets, but not every animal can tolerate it, at least maybe not right away. And so you have to sort of go with what your animal can handle and get a little bit of help if you feel like you need that to get your animal to where you want. But certainly there's also lightly cooked diets, but basically anything that has more natural, unadulterated ingredients in it and is not just garbage from the corn industry and distillery and things like that, which that's what you would find in the dry kibble. So the more you can feed actual real food, the better.
Yeah, and I guess you can make that transition slowly.
Yeah.
So, and kind of look at what their poop looks like.
Yeah. And if you need help, then work with someone like a holistic vet who can support you with that. There are a bunch of Facebook groups as well, although there's a ton of different opinions on everything there. But still, there are a lot of people out there that are feeding raw diets. Pet stores can be really great resources as well. And I'm talking about the healthy pet stores. I'm not talking about PetSmarts and Petco and those, because the people in these healthy pet stores, they're usually very well educated on things. So they can definitely help with that as well.
Yeah, I think the big problem with kibble, besides all the weird ingredients, are that they cook it so high and you get those AGEs, those advanced glycation end products, that they're not good for us. It's, one of the reasons like French fries aren't good because they have a lot of AGEs besides all the fat. And so I think, that's what you end up with kibble, but sometimes you start with a topper or things.
Yeah, you can always start slowly, but definitely the healthier the diet, the healthier the animal can be, for sure.
Yeah, I always think it's funny when they say don't feed your dogs human food, and I'm thinking, well, what's the human eating? If the human's swinging through McDonald's and
definitely not. Yeah, exactly, because human food is going to be healthier than some nasty kibble. I mean, I always say there is no healthy kibble, really, because they're all highly processed. A lot of them are high in carbohydrates. Most kibble can't be made without high levels of carbs, because otherwise it's just a powdery mess, basically. And that itself is just against what animals, dogs and cats would eat in the wild. They don't eat a ton of carbs. Their diet is made of maybe at the most 10% carbs, whereas kibble usually has up to 40, 50, 60% carbs, which is the reverse of what they would eat in the wild. And that itself already tells you that it can't work, at least not in this environment. I know there are a lot of people who say, yeah, but I fed my previous dog kibble and, he lived to 18 or something like that. But unfortunately, nowadays, we live in a very different environment where health is hard to come by and hard to maintain. So we have to work a lot harder on it. So we don't have as much leeway to wear off what's healthy,
All right. Well, I think it's been an hour. If we don't have any more questions or.
No, I think that's it. I don't see anything else. So thank you so much for, joining together here in this.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's always good.
Yeah, it was fun. And always more to learn and explore and talk about.
Yep.
Yeah, we didn't get to the soil, because that's another part that's really important in the healing. So I'm just planting that seed. Healthy soil is where the solution is. All right. Anyways, it was great to see all of you. Thanks for hanging in there and coming in to listen. And obviously the recording will be there, and I will post it on YouTube as well. And I don't know if you want to post it on YouTube as well. I can.
Yeah, I'm sure that. Yeah.
Recording. So.
Not me personally, because I'd mess it up, but somebody will.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for the time.
Yeah. Thank you. And have a nice evening, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.